There is a fundamental issue in America that people speak about when they're in safe company, but few speak of publicly. We haven't heard about it during the presidential debates, yet it is there, like the gorilla in the room that we try not to notice. Perhaps it will simply disappear if we ignore it. The extraterritorial jurisdiction brings the gorilla smack into view, and it needs to be addressed and dealt with. Ignoring it lets it grow and become more difficult to deal with as each day passes. The issue is, will America remain a free and open nation under the protections of the Constitution of the United States and our state, which were both enacted to protect individuals' property rights? Because without secure property rights, there can be no liberty. Property rights start with the natural fact that I own my body and you own yours. That is what gives us our personhood. It is, in fact, the danger of the healthcare bill, which, in essence, takes control of our bodies and even has influence over who gets health care or who doesn't, which has life or death consequences. That we each own our personhood gives us standing under the law. On the other hand, Sharia law doesn't work that way. The United Nations Charter doesn't work that way either. The UN holds that an owl or fish has more rights than you and I have. Where the U.S. Constitution was designed to make us safe in our personhood and in our homes and personal property, UN Agenda 21 takes that all away. And it has been working for a long, long time to do just that, to condition us for the day when the New World Order under the United Nations Charter replaces the American flag and America's sovereignty. In 1992, President George Bush Sr. signed on to Agenda 21 Sustainable Development for America. In 1995, President Bill Clinton signed an executive order mandating all federal agencies to direct their departments to conform with UN Agenda 21. The results didn't show up immediately, but today, the New World Order that Bush and Clinton still support glares at us, disturbs and frightens us through federal departments and agencies, EPA, IRS, HUD, FERC, INS, etc., and through unelected commissions and committees that day by day take us farther and farther away from our Constitution and closer to the UN Charter, in which property rights do not exist. It is with this knowledge that we look at the ETJ issue to decide if it takes us closer to the America that generations have fought to protect, or does it take us even closer to the day when America, as we know it, will simply melt like warm butter to be spread on the toast of Soviet-style Big Brother is watching you serfdom. That is the question: freedom or tyranny? The ETJ is part of that question. You are already familiar with media mind control efforts attempting to make it okay or normal to leave out the words "under God" in our Pledge of Allegiance, to remove the 10 Commandments from government offices and buildings, to use the word holiday in place of Christmas. We are seeing that the occupiers can take over a public park or street and engage in criminal behavior there, even displaying terrorist-style tactics that cause harm to life and property, while our electeds aid and give the occupiers comfort and applause. Meanwhile, self-reliant, law-abiding citizens who simply want to grow food in their gardens are raided by deputies without search warrants signed by a judge. And they do that because the Patriot Act lets them write their own search warrants, and the agencies they work for have grown used to following Agenda 21 and not the U.S. Constitution. If we are going to save our nation's sovereignty, each county in America has to fight back right on its local property rights issues, because that is where they are being abused, and that is where the fight must be. For us, the obvious issue is the ETJ. There are other issues in Arkansas and other states, but when you boil them down, the one thing they have in common is that they are unconstitutional property rights violations on the path to conditioning us to make Big Brother bigger, and the individual citizens a crumb on the table of those whose egos and desire to control the globe have made dumbing down our children the goal of education, and individual self-reliance and independence a thing of scorn. It is in that spirit we now look at government control of our private property under a fiction called the extraterritorial jurisdiction. we will show you other examples of the epidemic proportion of property rights abuses in America to highlight what happens when a camel gets his nose under the tent. It has been said that the city of Hot Springs was authorized by state code to enact an ETJ, extraterritorial jurisdiction, over land in the county extending 5 miles outside the city's municipal boundaries. It was also said the ETJ was for cities located next to a navigable waterway. However, many cities not situated on a navigable stream have an ETJ. The bill signed by Arkansas's governor on March 15, 2011, clearly states the current ETJ for the city of Hot Springs extends for 1 mile beyond the city's corporate municipal limits. That bill also established authority for a municipality to create a planning commission consisting of members not elected by public vote. The bill also says the Planning Commission shall prepare plans, ordinances, and regulations for land within the ETJ and bring them to the City Board to be enacted into legal ordinances. In many cases, the City Board simply rubber stamps its approval of the Commission's suggestions. Let's look at what power that gives a commission of people who were not elected by the citizens, for whom the commission has been given the authority to decide how their land can or cannot be subdivided, and can regulate the use of their land, and can make ordinances for the city board to vote on affecting said subdivision or land use, when the citizens affected thereby have no representation on the city board. A question we might ask here is, who owns your land if control over its use is in the hands of someone that is not you, to whom you have not given power of attorney, who can, via ordinances and regulations that you can't vote on, cause your property to lose value, cause you to be deprived of your freedom to divide your land, cause you great expense and delay by forcing you to make driveways or curbs in your property in order to divide it, and could deprive you from growing a garden or raising rabbits or digging a well or anything else that you choose in your pursuit of happiness and security in your property, which you bought and hold title to. Following from the Arkansas Code current through the 2011 legislative session are some of the power, duties, regulations, and controls of the Planning Commission. The regulations that seem to interest most people are the following. The regulation of lot or parcel splits, which is the dividing of an existing lot or parcel into 2 or more lots or parcels. The county recorder shall not accept any plat for records without the approval of the Planning Commission. Let's say you own 10 acres in the ETJ and want to sell half, but neither you nor the buyer want a driveway with curbs and gutters, nor city water, nor hook up to the city sewer, and your land perks enough for a septic system, but the Planning Commission won't approve your sale without the improvements that you wouldn't have had to make without ETJ control. What can you do about it? The Commission may enter upon land to make examination and surveys and maintain necessary monuments and markers thereon. The Commission may receive and spend funds from federal, state, county, municipal, and other public and private sources, may contract with respect thereto, and may hire a staff and contract for consultant services. This regulation causes concern by anyone familiar with UN Agenda 21 Sustainable Development Policies. The President's Executive Order No. 13575, titled The White House Council on Rural Development, will cause even greater concern. For others not familiar with the programs just mentioned, They work through metropolitan planning commissions that have hired outside consultants to guide them in developing programs. When you know the UN plan is to move people off rural lands where they can be independent and self-sufficient into crowded cities where they can be more closely controlled. The following two clips demonstrate a concerted move by government agencies to prevent locally grown food from being available for people in their own community. Our previous video exposing the enemy explains the reason. Copies will be available at the Property Rights Alliance table at the end of this event.
With me now is Tim Whiteman. He owns a small dairy farm in Ohio. Also, Debbie Stockton. She's with the National Independent Consumers and Farmers Association. Debbie, let me start with you. People are calling me up left and right and saying this thing is a nightmare for anybody with a farm, even a garden down the road. Is any of that true?
Yeah, sure, it's absolutely true. The way the bill is written, it has very broad language, and it says that a food production facility shall be considered to be every farm, ranch, orchard, aquacultural facility, vineyard, or confined animal feeding operation. Well, what the bill does not exclude explicitly, it includes implicitly. It does not define farm. It doesn't say a farm is this, that, or the other. It simply says every farm.
Tim, Tim, you're a farmer. You're actually a dairy farmer, right?
Correct.
Okay. Big dairy farm, little dairy farm, couple of cows,
no,
couple
little
of
dairy farm.
Little dairy farm.
Yeah.
And do you
6 cows.
6 cows. So this is all by hand. You're doing right? I mean, I assume you.
No.
You got machines
I got
to
machines
do it for just
well.
6, huh? Wow. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So now, do you sell the milk?
Actually, I sell the cows, and the people pay me to do the work. It's called a herd share program here in Ohio.
So how is this going to hurt? How is this going to hurt you?
As is most foods in these new bills, everything is considered hazardous. Raw milk's always been vilified for a long time, so now I'll be producing a hazardous product, and if I don't follow the rules the way the government says I should follow the rules, they can.
Why are they passing this law if they're not going to do some of these things?
Oh, they will. They're just not going to do all of them all at once. I mean, what they're going to say is, oh, this isn't going to affect the small farmer. This is for areas where we feel that there is a genuine food safety hazard. And they're not going to go after small farmers right away, but they will eventually.
Okay.
And it will simply put small farmers out of business.
Now, do either of you know, there's like all kinds of paperwork going with it too. Like if I go and buy groceries from vegetables from a farmer, I'm supposed to fill out paperwork, right? And say I bought a carrot and some strawberries, and here's my information in case something goes wrong.
Yeah, and what's that supposed to accomplish?
Go ahead, Tim. You start.
Well, what they want is, they want total traceability, which in our local food markets, they have the barcode, so they can trace that right back to the production facility, even farther back if they want to. What they want is total traceability, which means if I take my products to a farmer's market, you, Mr. Beck, will have to fill out a form telling me what you bought and when you plan to consume it, so I can keep it on record. If something should happen and they trace it back to the farmer's market, they can call you and say, don't eat that stuff because it may get you sick.
Hey, Tim.
Small farms are the fastest growing economic sector in the country. They're growing by an order of about 10,000 a year. And they are simply not going to allow this to happen, for the federal government to come onto their property and tell them what they can and cannot do.
I have to tell you, we are so incredibly stupid right now. We are doing everything. And you know, who's going to you guys tell me if I'm wrong. Who's going to benefit from this? Big Farm.
Oh, the major corporations. That's
Absolutely.
right.
Oh, major corporations.
That's all this is a vehicle.
That's exactly
George, what the heck is going on over there? Do police have nothing better to do in LA than raid organic food stores?
Well, the Los Angeles Times broke this story, and what's shocking about this story is that police officers are going into this grocery store. It's a co-op organic raw food store, guns drawn. And we put this up on Survive and Thrive TV, and it's basically created a firestorm on the internet. People are really, really shocked that the police and the district attorney don't have anything better to do but to harass local cooperatives, engaging in sharing food.
Right, yeah.
It's pretty shocking.
Our viewers are getting a chance to kind of see that video right now, and it is pretty shocking stuff. I mean, you're seeing the police here with their guns raised like they're about to, raid some sort of drug house or something like that. I've heard of fights over a lot of things in the past year. We talk about immigration, healthcare, the war in Afghanistan, but tell me about this battle over organic foods that's brewing. I mean, why are people getting so fired up about this?
Well, what's happening in this country is big agricultural business, large corporations see these co-ops as a threat. They control a majority of the food that's produced in America, and they've hijacked the FDA and government regulatory agencies. If you think about it, these private individuals that go out and own a piece of a farm or own a cow and then share in that production of that is a threat to the market share of these corporations. They don't fit into the corporate model, therefore they must be destroyed, apparently.
$1,200 homeowners around the Lake of the Ozarks in Missouri and thousands of others in Washington State, Oklahoma, and Alabama face orders from FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, whose members are not elected by the public. FERC is requiring the shoreline homes around the lake to be raised and the property restored to its natural state. U.S. Congresswoman Vicky Hartzler said, "I don't understand why FERC has any business dealing with the shoreline, which has nothing to do with the turbines or energy or power." When Ameren Missouri, the power company that owns the energy company, applied for a new 40-year license to operate the dam, FERC, in a written statement, maintained it was Ameren's responsibility to carry out the terms and conditions of the license, which now includes the demolition of the homes on the shoreline of the lake. FERC implied that without the demolition, there would be no license to produce electricity. Talk about playing hardball. But citizen homeowners and their elected U.S. senators, both Democrat and Republican, worked together, and it appears that FERC has relented, telling Ameren that residents who have deed and title to their land will be exempt from demolition. In Pulaski County, Arkansas, property owners around Lake Maumelle have a 1/4 to 1/2 mile setback from the shoreline, which is managed by the Central Arkansas Watershed Authority. 95% of the Pulaski County population depends on the lake for its drinking water. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, Lake Maumelle is one of the cleanest lakes in the southeastern United States. Recently, the non-elected Pulaski County Planning Commission contracted with a United Nations non-governmental agency known as ICLEI, which implements the United Nations Agenda 21 Sustainable Development Policies in cities and counties all over the area. As a result, the Commission is recommending to the Pulaski County Quorum Court to make 60% of the land around the lake not usable by the landowners, in addition to the lake frontage already dedicated to the Central Arkansas watershed, not taking it by eminent domain, simply attempting to destroy the value of the owner's land, depriving them of using the land except to mow it twice a year and, of course, pay taxes on it. ICLEI, the Council for Environmental Initiatives, is all about moving people off rural land into cities where another UN program called Smart Growth can control its residents' lives from A to Z. This moving people off land around water also accomplishes taking away people's ability to grow food gardens using available water. Are you beginning to see a pattern emerge? If this sounds ominous to you, it might be wise to take that as a warning that if it can happen on a huge lake in Pulaski County, Garland County's lakes may not be immune from the same consequence. Seems like it would just be common sense for Garland County residents, the sheriff's office, and elected officials to develop a strong property rights alliance to protect the citizens' rights at this time. You might be interested in knowing that when members of the Garland County Tea Party questioned the Pulaski County Planning Commission at a public meeting, the commission couldn't answer any of the basic questions asked of them about the who, what, and why of the decision to take away use of 60% of the land. It was obvious that they were simply led by the ICLEI consultant's game plan. Water issues are predominant in many of current property rights abuses. Thanks to a great deal of citizen involvement in this matter, the Pulaski County Planning Commission is at least asking more questions and looking at details to prevent unfairness to the homeowners around the lake. Here are shocking examples from across the country of government taking liberty by taking property.
Start with you first and make sure I have this straight. The government is not trying to condemn this property and pay the fair market value for it under the Fifth Amendment. They are trying to seize this property and pay your client nothing and do with it as they see fit.
That's exactly right, Judge. They want to take the Motel Caswell away from Russ and his wife, sell it, and then use the proceeds to pad their own budgets. And they are doing this not because Mr. Caswell has done anything wrong. They admit he has done nothing wrong. He has no criminal history whatsoever. But because a handful of people at the motel over the course of the past 20 years have engaged in some illicit activities at a motel, something that happens at every motel and hotel in the country. It is an outrageous abuse of power, but it's something that happens when you give government this ability to seize and forfeit property without a criminal conviction.
Mr. Caswell, what's the worst thing that happened in that motel or that hotel that has the police trying to steal it from you?
I paid the mortgage off, I guess, as far as I can tell. I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, we don't get our share of bad people. There's no getting around it, but so does all the other motels around there, and the Home Depot parking lot up the street and the Demoulas parking lot up the street, which the police have both given warnings to both of those places.
Got it.
And they come after me with absolutely no warning, no heads up. Nobody from the town has ever contacted me, be it the selectman, the town manager, police chiefs, all the way down. Nobody has ever contacted me about any problems at the motel or what we might do to maybe fix these
Scott,
problems
what is the law? What is the law in Massachusetts, and how have the courts interpreted that law? Surely the government can't take property from someone who is innocent of a crime because some third person was on the property when they may have committed a crime.
Well, civil forfeiture laws in Massachusetts and throughout the country are very, very broad, and it's one of the reasons why civil forfeiture has to be done away with. Criminal forfeiture, after somebody is convicted of a crime, if you want to take away the property that he got illegally, that can be legitimate. But civil forfeiture is when the government takes people's property away from them, regardless of whether or not they've been convicted of any crime or even arrested for any crime. One of the most outrageous things about the Massachusetts case is that this forfeiture would probably be illegal under state law, so the local police department transferred it to the feds, and now the U.S. attorney is after the Motel Caswell, and they're going to split the proceeds of this forfeiture. This is about making money.
Here's the exciting part of the story. Citizens in action with law enforcement and elected officials making progress. Liberty, taking it back.
Tell you why you might think, well, why are sheriffs involved in this coordination and this government controversy? Well, because all sheriffs are sworn to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. You know, I try to remember continuously, we serve the people. You don't work for us, we work for you. And I just like a little bit of balance between the need to protect the environment, things like fish, because most of the people in my county are telling me, Hey, you know what? Some of you federal and state agencies care more about fish, frogs, trees, and birds than you do about the human race. What's that all about? These federal agencies are not properly coordinating or cooperating with us, which is required by law. So these great sheriffs up here, and I've been involved in that the last 10 months, is to force these federal and state agencies to start serving the people and coordinate and start balancing your decisions with the needs of the people. I could go on, but those are just a few of the reasons the sheriffs are intimately involved in this fight, because if we don't stand up, we are right now in a fight for our survival. We are fighting not only for ourselves, more importantly, we're fighting for the survival of our counties, of our local communities, and our children and our grandchildren. And if we don't save things like agriculture, and we let them take our water and land and push us off, we won't have any public safety, we'll have no quality of life, we'll have nothing.
And I have learned that the assault that's being committed against the people of our community by our own government. Today, it was about a year ago when I had a meeting with our Grange. They invited me to talk with the U.S. Forest Service manager. At that point in time, I learned about a little-known thing called the Travel Management Plan. This Travel Management Plan exists if you have U.S. Forest Service lands or federal lands that are in the hands and managed by the government, the federal government. There is a Travel Management Plan that has been put forward. This Travel Management Plan was calling for not only limiting but also decommissioning roads within our community. They had done this without my knowledge. They had engaged in this activity without the knowledge in large part of our county government. They immediately started to engage in coordination with our local government and with the federal government agencies that were involved. I informed the other sheriffs that have those types of things in their areas to look at this, to please take a look and see if this is going on in their areas, because if it is in mine, and it had been for over a year without my knowledge, that it was going on in their areas and their communities as well. We have an assault upon our community. One of the greatest things about Del Norte County is we have everything that we need to be self-sustaining, self-reliant, and to have a thriving economy. We can live in harmony and sustain our environment, whether it's through fishing or timber. But those things have been denied for us and from us by our government. 74% of Del Norte County is either in federal or state holdings right now. Their influence on us is crippling our community and our economy. And as sheriff, I have taken it upon as part of my responsibility to the public safety, well-being, and welfare of my community to seek out and try to stop any infringement upon the rights of our property, our lives, or our liberties within Del Norte County. But the responsibility, the absolute critical responsibility, the shame that has come upon us by the infliction of our own government's actions towards us rests only in one person's hands, and that's our own. We have been asleep too long. We have allowed government to dictate. We have allowed parties to tell us who they were going to give us as our candidates. We have allowed people to stand by, and we have allowed this to happen to our country. Our founding fathers saw this, understood it, warned us about it, but they also gave us the tools to repair and to fix our country.
In Trinity County, you know, the government has such a nice spin or a nice way to phrase things. The travel plan. Doesn't that sound nice? It sounds, all we have to do is sign up and we're part of the travel plan, right? No, what it is the travel plan is to keep us off of public lands is what it is. In the southern part of our county, I found out just a couple of weeks ago that they're decommissioning roads. They haven't discussed that with the sheriff's office.
Plumas County Unified School District used to be one of the wealthiest school districts in the nation because of the timber. And it's gone. It's just gone, and the mining's gone. And now they're looking at your water, and that presentation earlier tonight was absolutely terrifying. But I think there's something they didn't count on. and it's this. This has not happened before. There is an awakening of a giant, and that is... And they didn't count on that. They've been going along. Bruce mentioned earlier the travel management plan. What a benign-sounding, innocuous label. And that is the measure of the insidiousness and the calculated efforts that have been underway for a long, long time.
Some of the things that have gone on that in the county that I reside in, where I serve, started seeing the excessive use of force and people getting guns pointed at them by federal officers for wood permit violations, road closure violations. It's excessive use of force. It's uncalled for. It's unacceptable.
So now in Lassen County, you know, we had 3 mills. I worked as a resident deputy up in the Big Valley area also, anyone that's familiar with that. When I started working there were 2 mills in town, and there was a large gold mining operation. Well, now none of those exist. You know, I traveled through that country today on my way up here just because it's a beautiful country. It added about 45 minutes to my drive, but I like to get up there and see the people up there. And as I was going through, it was just sickening to see how many places are vacant, how many places have for sale signs on them, and it's just sad what's happening to rural America. In our county, we're also facing the same problems with the travel management plan, and they're also trying to, on some of the BLM lands, in the eastern portion of our county, the Skedaddle Mountain Range, they're trying to make that a national monument and restrict our access or not allow us access to it.
What people need to understand is that the Constitution is the foundation. The word Constitution means foundation. And if you don't have a good foundation of your home will crumble. If we don't have a good foundation for this country will crumble. Now let me tell you a few things about the Constitution that you all should keep in mind. One of them is if you read the Constitution, you will understand that the way it is set up, that the federal government and state government has to have a law for everything that they do. When the federal government comes out and asks you about or tells you what they're doing, you have the right to say, and what law allows you to do that. But it doesn't work the other way around. The Constitution made the citizens of the United States free people. And so we can do anything that the law does not prohibit. And I gotta tell you, I think in Washington they kind of got that swamped. You should be proud of what you do and proud of who you are, and you do not need a law to be able to manage your homes and manage your lives. Now let me tell you something else about the Constitution. I think this is really interesting. You know Daniel Webster, the guy that wrote the dictionary? He did not write the first dictionary so y'all could spell better. In fact, if you look at one of the first dictionaries in the first publication, in the very front it says that he wrote the dictionary so that they couldn't change the meaning of the words in the Constitution. And another thing you've got to remember is that a lot of people make the mistake and they call it my constitutional rights. Ladies and gentlemen, the Constitution does not give you rights. God gives you rights. The Constitution is the document that stops the government from taking your rights. And if you look at the Federalist Papers, if you look at the writings of the founders, they wrote the Bill of Rights, and even though private property is not mentioned until the Fifth Amendment, they believed that the foundation for every single right in this country, our freedom of speech, our freedom to vote, our freedom to petition, it's all based on the right of ownership of private property. And it doesn't matter whether that private property is my parents' ranch in Big Piney, Wyoming, or your right to make a living and to hold something, or your ideas, they're your property. And the Founding Fathers believed that that was the basis for every other freedom we have in this country. This kind of madness has to stop. We have to get control of this government. One way to do that is rallies like this, standing with sheriffs like this, standing up for our country, teaching our children. So thank you for having me. I appreciate your sheriffs. I appreciate you for electing them. And keep up the fight.
I'll be joined in a matter of minutes with Senator Rand Paul. He's been leading a fight on the out-of-control EPA. Senator Paul, in fact, was the first to tell me about the couple you're about to meet, Mike and Chantel Sackett, and their Supreme Court case against the EPA is the focus tonight. The Sacketts were in the process of building their dream home in northern Idaho when the EPA summarily shut them down. Even though they had all of the requisite permits, they claimed their property was wetlands, even though it's 500 feet from the nearest lake. Now the Sacketts are taking their case all the way to the Supreme Court. Mike and Chantel Sackett, along with their attorney, Damian Shipp, joining us from Capitol Hill, where they've been taking part in a forum led by Senator Rand Paul, and they were joined with other families who've been targeted by the EPA. First of all, thank you all for being here. And Mike, Chantel, let me ask you, you attended that forum today. Do you think it was productive? Do you think it's the basis for change?
We definitely believe it is, Lou. It was a great forum. There was a lot of good stories told, and there was a good showing by the Congress and the senators. It went really well.
Your delegation from the state of Idaho was there, Chantel, Mike. These are folks that are actively engaged now in supporting you in your battle against the EPA. Is that correct?
That's correct. It was nice. We had Congressman Labrador, Senator Risch, and Senator Crapo there.
And Congressman Labrador is really stepping up. I know I talked with Senator Crapo. He's doing everything his office can do now. By the way, Senator Jim DeMint called both of you patriots for taking on the EPA. That had to feel pretty good.
Yeah, it did. Didn't expect that.
Yeah. And let me turn to you, Damian. You have found a document as a result of the friend of the court brief filed by the Chamber of Commerce. And this is, and I've been told that this is a quote from the document you found, that the EPA actually trains its personnel to make the terms of unilateral orders like the one given to the Sacketts ugly, and this is a quote, ugly, onerous, and tough, very unpleasant, in order to coerce settlements, and that EPA seeks to threaten recipients with games of Russian roulette, whatever that means, so as to further coerce their entry into voluntary decrees. Damian, we're talking about the American government here, aren't we?
It sounds almost like a Soviet-era government, Lou. We were absolutely flabbergasted when we read these documents, which you weren't aware of before the Chamber of Commerce submitted their brief last week in our support, but we're very thankful that we now have this evidence before the court to show that this is not just simply a case of the Sacketts being beaten up. This is a problem with the agency across the board, treating American citizens as if they were not American citizens, as if they were just slaves, and it's just atrocious.
It's atrocious, and the Sackett story, as compelling and heartbreaking as it is, there are other stories in that forum today with more abuse by government agencies, including and particularly the EPA, right?
No, that's absolutely right. There were a number of families there who just told heartbreaking stories of their lives being beaten up by EPA. One family talked about how their father, who is now dying actually, was put in jail for 2 years for allegedly filling a wetland which he said was not a wetland at all. It's just atrocious. It makes one really angry, and let's hope that we can have some improvement. I'm happy to say that at the end of the hearing, Senator Paul said that he is planning on submitting legislation that will try and rein in EPA's authority under the Clean Water Act.
We're going to take that up with Senator Paul here in just a matter of moments. Mike and Chantel, I've got to ask how you're feeling, how the battle is going. I know, Senator Mink called you patriots. You're absolute heroes for putting up with what you have and working so hard and courageously to prevail against what is clearly one of the most un-American agencies in its actions, in your case, that I could even imagine happening. How are you feeling?
Well, Lou, we feel actually pretty grateful that Senator Rand Paul invited us to come talk. Hearing some of the stories that we heard today that were heartbreaking makes us feel like we're part of a group that is able to fight this with Senator Rand Paul's help.
Well, that's wonderful, and you're also part of a larger group. We're called Citizens, and it's well past time that Citizens made certain that their government was operating in support of citizens rather than some abstraction or some other interest that is unrecognizable to most of us. Mr. and Mrs. Sackett, thank you so much for being with us. Mr. Schiff, thank you. And
thanks.
Thank you.
We continue to appreciate your help in
50 years from now, 10 years from now, 5 years from now, will there be anything worth celebrating? Well, in the long history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its maximum hour of danger. This is that hour. You are that generation. This is your challenge, to defend freedom in every way you can from every enemy there is, even when it is the tyranny of the majority. And then we will have much to celebrate, and we will give to our children and grandchildren the freedom we once knew. Thank you, and God love you, and God bless you.